everybody. Welcome back to the Sackhoff Show. I am your host, Katee Sackhoff. Thank you for joining me today. I am so excited that you are here, and I'm even more excited for our guest today. Make sure that you stick around after the show for the hindsight. If you have no idea what that is, you should stick around. It's super fun. We get into comments and emails and things. Make sure to send your comments and your emails to thesackhoffshow@gmail.com. And more on that later. For now, today's guest is none other than my friend, Jay Ellis. If you guys don't know who Jay is, he is in Top Gun Maverick, somebody I used to know, Insecure, and he has a new book that came out last week called Did Everybody Have an Imaginary Friend, or Was It Just Me? I read the book. I'm super excited for it. We talk about it. We talk about life. It's a super fun conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Make sure that you check out jayellis.com because he is going on a book tour. I think he's actually on it right now. So hopefully he's going to be in an area close to you. I've known Jay for like 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than 10 years, 15 years. We met on an Amfar motorcycle ride for charity. And that group of people quickly became a really close-knit group. There's quite a few people that I'm still very good friends with till this day. And Jay is one of them. So remember, stick around for after the show, the hindsight. And other than that, I'm going to get out of your way so you can enjoy Jay Ellis. I want to talk about the book, but first of all, I have so much I want to talk to you about because I know that you guys just welcomed a new baby.
We did. A little boy in the house now. We got 2 kids in the house. It's crazy. I have a 4.5-year-old who you know, Nora, and now we got a little baby boy, 12 days old, Noah.
Noah,
it's crazy.
12 days old.
It's wild.
How's Nina? How's he?
Nina's good. Nina's really, really good. Recovered well. She's back out there being Nina. She's tough. She's working. She's doing her thing already. And baby is great and eating and growing and, sleeping and pooping and doing the thing that babies do. Getting smothered by his older sister, who is in love with him.
Is she?
Yeah, she is. She is. But it's pretty cool. It's been amazing so far. It's been a very nice, 2 weeks to just be a family, just be home and us all be together and welcome this little guy, this stranger.
Yeah. It's weird. Our son is 2 months old now.
Congrats.
So a 2-month-old and a 2.5-year-old. And the first 2 months went so fast. Were you the parents that had the little thing that was 2 months old, 1 month old, and you took your photos and all that? You didn't do that?
We didn't do that. I aspire to do stuff like that. And I look at the people who do it and I'm A, slightly jealous, but B, I'm like, where did you get the time to do that? And I just didn't have the time. This kid would not let me do it, even if I wanted to do it. But we did not do it. But I did see a lot of them out there.
We did it with our first, and we got to our second and realized that we'd forgotten, and we kept talking about it. And then we got to 1.5 months, and I went, we got to take this picture or it's never going to happen. So we put a Post-it note on him.
I love it.
1.5 months. And we were like, okay.
That's so good. That's so good.
First child, we babied the crap out of our second one. I think he's going to raise himself.
We all do. I find myself, I think I was actually very chill with our first kid. I grew up with a lot of cousins. I'm an only child, but I grew up with a lot of cousins, and they lived with us, at different points. And I am the oldest of the cousins, so I was around a lot of babies. So I think I was very much more, I don't want to say chill about having a baby, but I was like, oh, okay, muscle memory kicking back in. This time around, I feel like I'm even more chill. I'm like, oh, there's a baby in the house? Where's he at? Oh, yeah, he is here. Okay, all right. Let me there's some milk in the fridge, right? Let me warm it up. It's definitely, it's funny how much it's funny how and you don't know. It's a new experience and everybody like has their own like perspective of it. But like you kind of get like hyped up and nervous and what's it going to be and how's it going to be and it's got to be perfect. And then you realize like the kid is fully going to dictate how it's going to go. Like you're a passenger. You're just along for the ride. And I think this time around, we very much, we understand that.
Yeah. You know, I think every step of the way as our daughter is sort of like grown up, we've had like different advice that has like saved us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the terrible two sort of place where she's at right now, the advice that was the most life changing for me was the moment you realize that you are the toy.
Yeah.
Play becomes so much easier.
100%. Like I love getting on the ground and like rolling around with my kid. Like it's also like it becomes easier, I think, in how you are engaging with your kid and what you're expecting of them in moments or how you're teaching them moments or how you're introducing things to them. But I think there's also this thing, and this is like part of what I kind of talk about with my book, but like we all lose this sense of play and this sense of imagination and this sense of creativity as we get older. Like we all lose it, and we lose it because life is very serious and you got to pay bills and puberty happens and you got braces and acne and boyfriends and girlfriends, like all these things, whatever, life, college. And so there's a reason that we lose that. But when you have a kid, and maybe if you don't have a kid, if you spend your time around young children and you get an opportunity to be a toy,
yeah.
and you get to let play back in your life, it's crazy how healing it is and how like stress relieving it is and how you're happier and your engagement levels, like you feel connected, right? Is really an amazing thing. And it's such a simple, easy thing. And we all kind of like, we lose it with the seriousness and busyness and chaoticness, if that's a word, of life.
Yeah. I'll take it. I was just talking about, you know, this exact same thing with somebody else that was just on the show. And we were talking about the fact that he had lost that sort of that thing that like go toward happiness. You go toward the joy and the things that like, you know, make you fulfilled and excited. And, you know, that because you're allowed to go after that kind of stuff when you're younger. You have this sort of like, this youthful spontaneity that just like is so refreshing and beautiful. And as you get older, and you're right, like you start to have all of this responsibility and these things, and you pay bills and you got to, you know, meet your quota for your health insurance and like all of these things. It takes the joy out of choice sometimes. And you're right, when you have kids and you get on the ground and you stay in that moment with them, it comes back.
Yeah. Everything washes away. It's really wild. If you can allow yourself to like not think about the next moment and just be there, everything washes away and like you're just in that bubble with with the kid, just playing and just being there. You know what I mean? It's such I don't know. I love it. It's a very freeing time.
Yeah.
And it makes all the stressful moments. In a weird way, my kid doesn't know this, but she's become like my stress management. Like, I'm like, let's go to here. Let's go play. What do you want to color? Let's go color. Like, what do you want to do? Because I don't want to think about any of this stuff right now. And I would much rather spend 15, 20, an hour, whatever it is with you just being silly. And kind of refilling that cup, so to speak, to then go back and deal with the adult stuff.
Yeah. It is almost like Xanax in a way. Yeah. If you can like really be in the moment. If you can't, it becomes quite difficult. You know, I've met people that don't like the play. They don't like hanging out with their children. I mean, it sounds awful. They don't like, they hate
I'm
their
sure
kids.
there's some people out there that say that. So there's probably some people out there that say that.
There are definitely people that are like, biggest mistake of my life. No, but there are people that like can't lose their inhibitions and can't let go of the shoulda, woulda, couldas and feel like that is a waste of time. And I feel so bad for those people, you know, like my dad has a hard time playing because he was so driven to succeed and make money and support his family and all of these things. And he is just learning it now, like as a grandfather, because we force him to. And it's so wonderful. He laughs with abandon now.
I love that. I love seeing a grandpa down on his knees, just crawling around, like while a kid's sitting on his back, pulling him, or you know what I mean, stuffing
Yes.
stuff in his face. Like, you're the horsey, eat horsey. Like I absolutely love it. I love to see my dad, because it's also such a different. Obviously we see our parents as people now and not just as parents. So you see them in a completely different way. But it is not a play that I remember with my dad, and not because it didn't necessarily happen. I'm sure it did when I was a kid, but just because I don't remember the times, because I was so young, and my memory at that 2 or 3 year old age isn't that reliable or isn't there. But it's fun to see him be that guy, be that grandpa.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely adore it. We have something else in common that I didn't realize, that you lived in Portland.
Yeah, you're from Portland.
I am.
Yeah.
How did I not know?
Do you know why I know you're from Portland?
How?
Because I don't look my friends up, so this is going to sound very weird. I
haven't looked my friends up until I started doing this. And now I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that.
This is super weird. I actually am doing, on my book tour, I'm going to PALS. I'm going to,
I know you are.
Which is where I crashed in college all the time. Like, that's where I went to go study and get off campus and try to look like I was smart and a literate, well-read person. And that is one of the tours on my stop. And I was like, who do I know that's from Portland? Like, I know people from Portland. Who's from Portland? So I was like, famous people from Portland. Because I'm thinking of Hollywood, people I know in this industry, right, who are from Portland, because that's where, a large part of my friend group is people that I work with and spend time with here in town. And so I'm like, who do I know that is from Portland that would come back to Portland to do this talk? And literally that's how I realized you're from Portland. But at the same time, I had reached out to Renee, who is this amazing author who's based in Portland, and she had said yes. So I did not beg you to.
Well, because you're coming here to PALS on August 15th for your book grading, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome, because I love PALS. And I never actually went to PALS as a kid.
Okay.
Because it was downtown.
Yeah.
And we lived in the suburbs, and my parents were when we got cars, we were allowed certain distances in certain places. Granted, we didn't have phones back then, so they really didn't know where we went. But we were not allowed to go downtown. Downtown sort of intimidated me. It was the big city in downtown.
Right.
So I didn't spend a lot of time in PALS until now. And now as an adult, I spend tons of time there. But what I did spend tons of time doing as a kid was going to Trailblazer games. Because my parents are season ticket holders. My grandfather has been a season ticket holder since the Trailblazers were formed.
Wow.
And he passed them on to my mom and dad. So the tickets have been in our family forever.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you talked about how you were here in the, what they call them, the
Jailblazers.
Years. So Jermaine O'Neal lived on our street.
Oh, that's crazy.
Jermaine was youngest player to ever play in the NBA. For people who don't know, Jermaine O'Neal got drafted, played his first NBA game when he was 18 years old with Portland, never really found footing in Portland, got traded in 2000, but got in a lot of trouble.
That whole team.
He's a kid.
That whole team. They were all kids. I mean,
children.
The oldest player on that team might have been 32, and 33, right? But the majority of them were in their early to mid 20s, the majority of that team. And so I was an intern on that Jailblazers team. I was there for the 2002, 2003 season, and then part of the 2003, 2004 season. I was an intern in the PR and marketing department. So my job was literally writing press releases every single time one of the players got in trouble. I had to do two jobs. My jobs were drafting statements for Mo Cheeks, who was the coach, about whatever had just transpired by one of the players. And then my other job was drafting press releases about how the team was responding to whatever the players had done. And this is a crazy season. This is, there's Ruben Patterson calls himself the Kobe stopper this season. And Kobe gives him 40 every single time they play him.
Oh, man.
Players had gotten in fights in practice. They had gotten in fights off the court. They
the amount of weed they were smoking.
The amount of The cops showed up at Damon Stoudemire's house because like they were out of town on a road trip, but randomly like someone broke in his house and there was weed just sitting on his doorstep, but they were like across the country. It was just a couple guys got in trouble driving from Seattle when the Sonics were still up there. They got in trouble driving from Seattle back down to Portland. And literally I would have to draft statements for Coach Cheeks and then have to write press releases for my boss to then go and obviously edit to then release out to the world about what these guys were doing. It's crazy. It's a crazy time.
God, they got in so much trouble. I remember my brother like going up the street and like smoking weed with Jermaine. I was like, this is insane that an 18-year-old professional basketball player lives on our street. Like, this is crazy.
So wild.
It was wild. It was
By the way, you would pull into the tunnel and all the guys was like, as they would pull in, they would open their doors and smoke would just billow out the car. Like, and you know, they show up 2 hours before a game. So I'm sure their buzz wore off by the time they got to playing. But like, still, like they pulled up and smoke was just billowing out of the car. It was like
to
fully
professional athlete status real hard. But I love it. I still love going to the games. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how big like basketball was in your life. You know, like I think we met like in 2000, God, when did we meet? 2009, 2000.
That was maybe 10, maybe that ride? Because we first went on the ride, right? Yes, you and Trisha, yeah. So that was, I think that was 10.
2010.
I think that, or maybe that was the summer of 9. Maybe it was the summer of 9, actually. Yeah.
And so I don't think we ever really talked about basketball and how basketball was such a huge part of your life, because I always knew you as like Jay Ellis, the actor.
Right.
But it was a massive part of your life, right? Like, I mean, and I know this because I read your book and I loved your book, by the way.
Thank you.
And I know that I find it hysterical that your parents sort of did what every parent did, which is like put your kid in everything.
Yeah.
Like you did everything.
Everything. All the sports, all the activities.
Yeah. Including like the things like the piano, like we did. Like you did everything.
Yeah.
Everything that your parents were like, you should try this. You should try this. What about this?
Yeah.
What about this? And basketball for you was such a, like you just loved it, right?
Yeah. I think I was intimidated by it for a while. Like, you know, I grew up at that age where like, who didn't want to be Michael Jordan? Like, you know, like literally the commercials where I want to be like Mike, like literally. And so I fell in love with it. And I wasn't that good, super skinny, and I had a crazy growth spurt, and a couple of friends talked me into playing, and I ended up, you know, playing, and I made like the C team the first year that I played, and then I made the B team, and then the next year I made like freshman team, and then I made junior varsity. And what was really interesting to me, it was cool because it was like the first time I feel like I focused on something and like was all in on it. It was the first thing, and I don't know that I had anything else like that in high school. Like it was the first thing where I was like, oh, I'm all in on this thing. Like I'll eat how I'm supposed to eat. I'll practice. I won't drink. I won't smoke. I won't stay out late. I won't do all of the, like this is what I want to do. And I was way behind because so many kids that I played with went and played in college and at big schools, but they had also been playing since they were so young. And I started playing much later. But the lessons I think I learned in basketball, which I talk about in the book, I have this chapter in the book called "There's No I in Team, but There Is a Me," and it was really the lessons I learned from coaches to, you know, being as mentors and role models, from anger management and watching kids like completely lose their temper and then destroy their own basketball careers. And then even me doing that at one point with a coach. And like that meant that, and the coach turned to me and told me I should transfer schools because he was never going to play me.
Yeah.
But really, and then teamwork, like I think was the other piece of that, which we use every single day, right? When we go to work. Like, I don't think people realize, I think it is not often explained or talked about enough about how much of a team being on a production is. Like everybody has a job. Everybody's got to be amazing at their job. And it's all to serve one purpose, which is like make the best show you can make the best movie you can make, have the best day you can have, or the best episode, or the best whatever it is. And it really takes a village, a big village to make it all happen. And I think I learned so much of that from basketball, where like, just because you're not the greatest at A doesn't mean you can't still contribute in some way. And that thing that you do contribute in, like, we need you to be great at that thing because it really helps the rest of the team.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, you know, there's another part obviously in that chapter where I talk about like the first time I ever got pulled over by a cop was after a basketball practice. And I got pulled over 9 times that year driving my mom's car. And, you know, it was a very like rude awakening to life. Like I was no longer a boy. I was no longer being treated like a boy. I was being treated like a man. And that was a very rude awakening.
Well, you talk about how your parents sort of gave you, before you got to take your mom's car, the Lexus.
The Lexus.
The Lex. You talk about how they gave you the lecture about like, these are the things, these are the rules you have to follow when you're doing the car. And all of those rules were rules that I probably had. Everyone had rules for driving the car. Yeah. Until you got to that last rule. And it was, this is what you do if you get pulled over by a cop.
Yeah.
I didn't get that rule.
We talk about it. We call it the talk.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like I say in the book, like I dread the day that I have to give the talk to my kids. But I didn't realize it at the time. I was like, oh my God, my parents are so overprotective. Okay, just give me the keys. Let me go. But the reality is like, you know, when you were pulled over, again, in a place like where I grew up, as a young Black man driving a car like that, like questions start zooming through, you know, officers' minds. And it isn't the same questions necessarily as some of my friends who I went to school with. And so it was a very rude awakening, again, like a harrowing experience to like think that like, oh my God, my parents are just being so overprotective, to like all of a sudden it's actually happening and this is what they meant by that and this is why they meant it. And I will say, even still, like no matter, as a teenager, you think you know everything. So no matter how much they tell you, you still don't think you're in danger. You still don't think anything could happen.
Right.
And I don't think it was until like afterwards, like after getting pulled over so many times, where I looked back and realized like, oh my God, my life could have gone a different way at any point if someone hadn't told me, don't reach, turn down the music, don't move fast. Had my father not told me that, my life could have took a turn at any point, really.
Absolutely. God, I can't imagine. When you went to college in Oregon and then found yourself sort of like, was the first transition into acting sort of like the modeling and then acting? Like, what was that transition to that? Because when you read your book and when I know you and like you went to school and like movies throughout your life and throughout the book are very prevalent in your life. Like movies, there was like, you know, like some people say there was like a soundtrack to their life, and there very well may have been for yours. But there were there was a movie for every part of your life that almost you identified with. And that was very clear in the book. So movies seemed like they were always a part of your life, but when did you decide to actually be an actor?
Yeah, I don't think I knew. I think I would have. Obviously, I'm very grateful for the walk that I've had and the journey that I've had. But I wouldn't say that I knew my passion for performing, my passion for acting, my passion for storytelling. I don't think I knew it was there. I just knew I loved watching movies and watching television.
Yeah.
And could do it all day. But when you're a kid, it kind of feels like all kids could do it all day long. You know what I mean? Like it feels like that's like we all could watch it all day long. But I didn't, I didn't know an actor. I didn't really know anyone who maybe had really been in a theater program. Right. Like, especially going through like middle school. So by the time I got to high school, I do remember like I wanted to try out for a play at one of my high schools. And the theater teacher told me that I wanted to try out for Will in the play Oklahoma. And the theater teacher told me that I wasn't the Will type. And 16-year-old me was like, man, whatever. Well, also I wanted to play basketball, and I would have never been able to commit to a production. And basketball took such a huge turn for me in high school. And obviously I got to go play in college, which is how I ended up in Portland. And I was actually in college. I didn't play that much. And I was kind of jealous of all the theater kids. Like I wished I was in the theater program instead of in practice. There was a freedom. There was, they seemed fulfilled in a different way. There was, inhibitions were different. Like there was just so many things that I looked over and it just felt like joy. And not that I didn't feel like I was having joy on the basketball court, but like that feels like a job. College basketball is a lot of work and it is a job, college sports. And when I looked over the theater program, I was like, man, that looks fun. Of course, grass is greener. Who knows what it would have been like over there. But I used all my electives in college to take classes around the theater program. So I did like a voice class and a movement class and a stage management class. Like I would do all these classes because I couldn't commit to a production because of basketball, but I could use all my electives to get as close to it as I could. And that's where I fell in love. That's where I really fell in love. And what I actually thought was very foolishly, well, here's what I thought. I thought that Portland has this big modeling scene because people want to shoot the Pacific Northwest because it's so beautiful, obviously, and it's so green, and the outdoors are amazing. But also you have Nike's headquarters there, and Adidas's U.S. headquarters, and Aviva, and New Balance, and all these companies. And so there's a big sports modeling for sure business there. So that's how I started. And I thought like, oh, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to model here, and then I'm going to move to New York and get another agency. And then while I'm in New York, I'm going to start doing theater. And then while I'm doing theater, someone's going to be like, oh my God, this kid is amazing. He should be on Broadway. And then I'm going to do Broadway. And then I'm going to get pulled out of Broadway and I'm going to move to LA where someone's going to give me my own spinoff of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where I'm the new nephew that moves into the house. And so that was my entire like...
You'd mapped it out.
I had fully mapped it out because my brain, I am such an... and I still fight with this in my creative process. I am such an analytical person. And I am able to... I look at everything and I go like, when I first started acting, I used to go, okay, well, 1 hour shows hire more actors than half hour shows. So I should be auditioning for 1 hour shows because I'll have a more more of a chance of getting a job.
Because there's more of them.
Because there's more of them. Like that's just how my brain works. I didn't care about, I just wanted the resume
but that's just
to then be able to go.
Sense.
You know what I mean? But you don't know that when you, like most people don't know that when they first start acting or when you're out here and you're auditioning and you're trying to get a few credits. But so my brain always worked like that. So that's how I mapped out exactly how I was going to get to like where I was going to go. Obviously, life did what life does. It was lifing, and it did not turn out that way. It didn't that journey did not happen the way that I thought it would. Maybe is the best way to put that.
Did you move right to Los Angeles?
No, I actually went. I did go spend a little bit of time in New York because I did model, and I spent a little time in New York, and I bounced around, and then I went to Prescott, Arizona for a little bit. Super random. My high school basketball coach, he had played in the NBA. His name was Brooks Thompson. He played for Oklahoma State, and then he played in the NBA for a while. He ended up being my high school basketball coach my senior year, and he went to go be the head coach at this junior college. And he was like, come be one of my assistants. So I went down and did that for like a half a season, and I was like, I ain't a basketball coach. That's not what I'm here to do. God bless all the basketball coaches out there, but that's just was what I was meant to do. All coaches, actually. So then I left and I came to LA and really kicked it for like the first 5 years. I'm not going to lie. This is a very, when you don't really know how to do it and no one does, but you don't really have a plan or you don't have an in or you're trying to figure out, it's quite a dangerous place to like just be kind of like hanging around and kicking it in your early 20s. You very easily can get distracted and thrown off the path.
Especially in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
What was your entry point? Like what was like when you first moved to LA, what was that point when you were like, oh, I've got a steady thing now? Like how long did that take?
It took a while. All right, I'll give it to you as fast as I possibly can. I moved here. I got a job working at Sports Club LA. They used to have, which is now Equinox, but Sports Club LA, it's under, the one I worked at was in Beverly Hills, under the Endeavor building, before Endeavor bought William Morris.
Yes, okay.
And my whole pitch here, back to my analytical brain, my whole thought was, oh, if I'm working here, then every day one of these agents is either going to come down in the morning or they're going to come on their lunch or they're going to come after work. And this is how I'm going to get my first agent. Obviously did not happen that way. But I fully thought...
Because everyone else at the gym had the exact same idea.
And by the way, and every agent there knew that every person in the gym had the exact same idea. And they were like, I just want to get to my workout, man. Like, I'm not here to find a client.
I don't need another towel.
So I thought that was going to happen. It did not happen. I've never told this story before, so you're going to be the first person to actually get this story. And she will get a huge kick out of it because every time we see each other, we laugh. But Kaylee Kiyoko, I met very early on when I moved to LA through a friend. And she was having a big birthday party on the CBS Radford lot. And it was a white party. And everybody was supposed to wear white. So I wore white, but then I wore like a camo jacket on top of it because I was like, I got to be cool and like stand out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to stand out.
Nobody else had that idea. Anyway, so I go to this party, having a good time, have a couple of drinks. And this agent walks up to me and never met him before, but he goes, hey, are you an actor? And I was talking to like 4 people and I was telling them what it was like to live in a model house with like 15, 16 guys at one time, which was horrible. But and he goes, so he walks up to me and he says, are you an actor? And I was like, of course I'm an actor. I had maybe taken an acting class at this point. No audition.
How old were you?
No audition technique at all whatsoever, by the way. Like, literally, I'll tell you. I was probably, I had to be 23.
Right, okay.
At this point. I was probably 23 at this point. So he says, listen, here's my card. I want you to come into my office on Monday or next week. And I want you to meet a couple of the agents in my office. So he tells me to bring my headshot, my resume. I had typed up every job I had had since I was 16 years old. Every single job. Like Old Navy, Smoothie King, Athlete's Foot, the cafeteria in college, doing salad
gave him
prep.
Your resume.
Every single job. And then I had foolishly taken some headshots with a photographer on Craigslist, back when everybody went to Craigslist to get stuff, for like $75 because I couldn't afford $300, $400, $500 headshots. Like, that was crazy. They were
super expensive.
It's so crazy. And so, but these headshots were horrible. They're literally like, you know, they're the worst. They're so compromising. I hope they never.
Oh my God, can we find them?
I hope they never come out because they're for sure. I'm sure I have a CD of them around here somewhere that I've like blacked out, like where it's at, because I don't want to know where it's at.
Oh my God.
All right, so I go into this meeting, and this guy, he runs this very reputable agency called Pakula King. And it is a very fine boutique agency with a lot of great actors. And you may not know every single one of them by name, but if you saw their face, you'd be like, oh, they're from that show or they're from that show. Well, this is Joel King. He's one of the partners. And we sit there, and I hand him my headshot, I hand him my resume, and he like tips his glasses down and looks at me and he goes, you have no idea what the hell you're doing, do you? And I go, no, but I swear, I will figure this out. I will book something. Just trust me. So he hip pockets me. Wow. And I start auditioning for it. I auditioned for Scandal. I auditioned for like all this stuff. And I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what it means.
You got auditions.
I got auditions. And I'm auditioning and I'm staring straight into the lens and I am just acting. I am like giving it. Like but I'm doing like Seventh Heaven, and like the casting director is laughing and I'm like, oh, I'm just bringing levity to the role. So clearly like that's why they're laughing. Like, it's Katee, it's horrible. It's so bad.
I just need some context. So you are in the audition with the reader.
With the reader.
And instead of looking at the reader, you're looking in the camera?
Down the barrel. Down the barrel. I am breaking all the walls.
Oh, God bless you.
I had no idea. But I was so foolish and so young. I always say, like, you have to be just dumb enough to believe you can do it.
Of course.
And I was just dumb enough to believe I could do it. And so a few months goes by, he calls me and he's like, listen, man, this isn't working out. You haven't gotten any good feedback. You haven't gotten any callbacks. And I'm like, oh, whatever, man. I don't want to be no starving artist driving across town, putting change in the meters. This is when you still actually had to use change in meters. Yep. Getting tickets. Get a job. And I worked for like another 2 years. And my boss calls me and she says, hey, I just got let go and you're the only person I've hired. So they're probably going to let you go next. And I had this moment where I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I was working retail and I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I could work retail anywhere in the world. I moved to Los Angeles to be an actor. This is what I want to do. And I I was afraid and I was a coward and I ran from it the first time. Like I didn't want to do acting class because I didn't want to like get notes and be told that like that I wasn't being honest or true or wasn't really in the moment. I didn't want to get rejected by auditions. I didn't want to go through that whole process that you have to go through. And I just said to myself, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to give myself 2 years. Again, analytical me thinking that I could make it work in 2 years, but I'm going to give myself 2 years and make it happen. I get an acting class, study for like literally a year and a half, 2 years. And then I start going out and doing workshops. And then like little by little, I get like an agent, and then I get a manager. And then I start auditioning again. And immediately I started testing. And then it was a change from there. It was a full change from there. A full career trajectory change, I guess.
What did your parents think? Because your dad, having never met your father, but reading your book, and your dad seems like a very serious person. He was in the Air Force for many years. It's why you traveled around so much. But he seems like very serious.
Mm-hmm.
What did your parents think when you were like, I want to be an actor?
Never told them.
You never told them?
Do you know the first time? So here's the 2 times. The first time I got exposed, and then the first time that they actually found out. First time I got exposed, I had auditioned for a commercial and booked it. And my like 17-year-old cousin at the time saw the commercial. He's a football player and he only watched his ESPN, and this commercial happened to come up on ESPN. And he calls my dad and he's like, my real name is Wendell. I'm Wendell Ramon Ellis Jr. And I go by Jay because of the junior. And he goes, hey, Wendell Jay is in a commercial. And my dad was like, he ain't in no commercial. I'm telling you, he's in a commercial, Unc. I saw him in the commercial. A couple days goes by, apparently, and my dad sees the commercial. Then he calls me and he's like, what you doing on the TV? And I was like, man, I just went on my lunch break. Someone just said, go across the street and do this thing. And I booked it. Who knew? I couldn't tell them. I was too afraid to tell them. Like, my dad is a mechanic. He's salt of the earth. He's like, he works with his hands. My dad is like Gibbs from NCIS. Like, nothing ruffles him. He's just like, he's a man. You know what I mean? And then my mom is this banker who like started college at 27 when I was 8 years old or something like that. 7 years old, she went to college. And so, you know, I was afraid to tell my parents, who had me as a teenager and had worked so hard to get me into college and get me these opportunities. I was afraid to tell them. They're like, I'm just gonna go chase the arts. So I fully was just like, oh, it was just a one-time thing. About 6 months later, I test for a pilot that Nachka Khan wrote, and Nanashka wrote, and it was called Don't Trust to Be in Apartment 23. And I'd actually booked it. And in the same day that they called me to tell me that I was the choice, Lance Bass was originally supposed to be in the show as the lead's best friend, and he dropped out and didn't want to do it. And apparently James Vanderbeek was out there like looking for a job, and he's super hot in the broadcast world. And so everybody was like, get James Vanderbeek. And in the minute they got James Vanderbeek, they were like, oh, well, we don't need Jay Ellis no more. Like, we got James Vanderbeek, so we don't need him no more. So I got fired. Literally in the same day that I got booked, I got fired. Oh, and I ended up, my acting coach called me, Leslie Kahn. She calls me. She goes, hey, I know you booked a B in Apartment 23, and I know what happened. But there's another actor in one of my classes who just got the audition, and I just think he would be perfect for the role. Would you coach him for it? And it's Eric Andre. So I go to Eric's house, and I coach him for the role, and he books the role that I had booked 4 days earlier. But that was the first time. That moment was the first time that I told them that I was an actor, because I had booked this pilot. And then I had to call them and tell them that I didn't actually book the pilot.
3 days later, you didn't?
And I wore black for like a week. I was like, I'm in mourning. I'm only wearing, I wore black literally for a week. Black jeans, black shirt every single day. I'm very dramatic, Katee.
I had a part taken from me. Like, in my mind, I think it was like 5 days before I was supposed to get on the plane, and I was recast. I don't really recollect what it was. It could have been 2 weeks. I don't even know. But to me, it was like I was packed. My bags were packed. Right. And they replaced me at the last minute. And I was on the floor crying, having to drink Ensure. for nutrients.
For nutrients.
Because I couldn't keep food. I was so, my life is over. I'm never going to work. I'm not leaving the house. Everyone knows. Everyone knows.
No, they look you in the eye. They just, you have to look away. The shame.
It took like a good probably week for me to stop needing to drink Ensure.
Yeah.
To like actually where I was eating food again. So I get the drama. So I wanted to talk about your book.
Yeah.
Because it really, number one, kudos.
Thank you.
Like, it's not easy.
No.
Like, everyone has a book in them.
Mm-hmm.
No one writes it.
Nobody writes it.
You know what I mean?
And I know why.
It's hard.
I know why they don't write it. I went through the experience. It is hard.
Walk me through it, because I know, you talk about in the book how you wrote an Instagram post and you sort of like opened your heart up on Instagram. And that was sort of the first moment that inspired you to like write, Did Everybody Have an Imaginary Friend?
Yeah. Yeah. It was in the pandemic and, we couldn't go to work, obviously, because of protocols, and most of, non-essential workers, the folks who were putting their lives on the line, like most of us obviously weren't able to go to work. And I found myself, I did all the trends that everybody did on social media. Like I burned a bunch of bread, and I listened to a podcast, and I downloaded Duolingo, and I watched some movies, but I just kept finding myself wanting something more. And I wasn't really sure what that is. And I don't know if you had this feeling, but I had been so busy, gratefully busy, by the way, but career-wise, I had been so busy that the pandemic was the first time where I was like, oh, I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get a haircut. I don't have to go to work. I don't have to promo something. And I was like, what am I without work? And so I just found myself like wanting something more. And like, my parents live here in Los Angeles, and I was down at their house in Inglewood, and my mom is like the keeper of records in our family. Like, she has pictures for both sides of our family that go back decades. And I'm looking at all these pictures, and I see my childhood and elementary books and middle school yearbooks. And I just realized, like, man, growing up back at that time, in that like 80s kind of 90s time, was such a wild time. There was this boom in media where like we all of a sudden had 24-hour cable networks and news networks, and like all this information was coming at us, and hypersexualization was being sold in a different way. And you have like obviously the rise of like gangs, and then you have the like hyper consumerism is pumped into overdrive. Like, there was just so much that was happening, by the way, and amazing films and television shows and music. And as I was kind of looking through all these pictures and looking at all these memories and kind of talking with my mom, like my imaginary friend came up, and I would ask a few questions, and then she would say something. I'd be like, oh, I remember that. That's when I threw like my shoes in this like gutter because I wanted to see if they could float. And she'd be like, yeah, but do you know what happened before that? You asked your dad, you asked your grandpa, you asked your grandma, you asked everybody to buy you some Michael Jordans, and they wouldn't buy them. So then your dad buys you the Converse, and you throw them in the gutter. And I was like, no, that's not why I did it. My imaginary friend made me do it. And so I found myself calling my grandma and asking stories, and my other grandma and my cousins, and I just started writing. I didn't think I would ever write a book, but I just started writing these stories because I didn't want to forget them, to be quite honest. Yeah. And as I started writing them, I started kind of seeing these themes rather, of imagination and creativity and play, and how I had it. And then, when you read the book, like it goes away when I get a little older. And we all have that. It's a coming of age, right? I think mine might have happened a little bit younger for the reasons and where I lived at the time and all of that. But like, we lose it. And then we get on this other side of life, and you don't have that outlet anymore. And it's such an important outlet to have. And I don't think it needs to manifest itself as an imaginary friend when you're an adult, but it could be a paint and sip. It could be a craft. It could be, building something, whittling wood. There's so many things it could be.
Well, so many people tapped into the ability to do that during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why so many people burnt bread and made pots and, like tapped into a creative outlet, because for so many people, there was nothing else.
Yeah.
You just like were alone with your thoughts and Netflix at home.
Yeah.
And hopefully a supportive partner who you stayed with if it was a good thing. You know what I mean? Like some people got married during the pandemic. Some people got divorced. Like it was a very different thing. But there were glimpses of creativity and imagination that came out of a lot of people during COVID.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I think it sits in all of us, right? You might got to do some digging and, get some therapy maybe or whatever it is. Like it sits inside all of us. It's so funny because when people say like, I'm not creative, I'm like, you're a lie. You are creative. Like it's in there. You were creative as a kid. So trust me, you're creative. Like you believed something that wasn't real as a kid, or you saw something, or you colored, or you had glue sticks and you glued things together and you made pom-poms and you did all these things. You have it. You may have not nurtured your creativity in the way where you're like an artist, sure, but that does not mean that you're not creative. That doesn't mean that you don't creatively do your job, right? Or think outside the box and think of like other ways to do a job. It's just about finding a way to tap into it and enjoy that and play and play and play. But you're right. So many people found that during the pandemic. And I think it's because we were all looking for a little bit more.
Yeah. So Mikey, your imaginary friend, comes into your life at a young age, leaves at approximately like 13, right?
Probably a little bit younger. 13. Probably a little bit younger. I say Mikey probably was really there from like 5 to like 11. And I think that 11 is probably really Mikey is more like a voice in my head. I don't really see Mikey as much. But by the time I'm like a preteen to teen, he's gone. Like he's definitely not there anymore. Yeah.
Do you think that having him like in your life, because your parents were actually really supportive of him, right?
Yeah, in the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Before you started like, toilet papering things and getting in trouble.
Yeah.
Do you think that like that creativity, because I can see similarities in like my childhood. I do not believe I had an imaginary friend, but I talked to myself all the time. I always talked to myself when I was a kid. And so I see similarities between that and the career path I chose because I feel like it was in some weird way, this like school of acting.
100%.
Do you feel that like that imagination and that time with Mikey, like tapped into something that you use till today?
Yeah, it's funny. Like someone was asking me this a couple of days ago, and like I don't think I knew that as a kid, right? I moved around a bunch. My dad was in the Air Force, and I talk about this in the book, but my dad was in the Air Force, and so I moved around quite a bit. And I'm an only child, like I said, and I went to 12 schools in 13 years. And when I was young and we were moving around, I was having to go through each of those moves by myself, right? I'd start a new school and then I'd get ripped away from friends, and then I'd start a new school and I'd be nervous about that new school and what were the kids going to be like? What was the classroom going to be like? And the teachers going to be like? And I think on top of that, like the music I was listening to and the movies I was watching and the dangers that were out there, right? You have like the war on drugs, which we know is really like a war on a community of people in this country. And you have, right? You have HIV AIDS, you have gang violence, you have, right? There's so many things that are happening.
And a lot of that disproportionately affects like, the Black community.
Young Black kids in the Black community at large. And I was a part of that. And I think, when I look at that time, I think my subconscious was like, okay, how do we protect you right now? How do we protect you? How do we make sense of all of this and help you process everything that is happening? That is way beyond what you should be processing and thinking about at this age. How do we do that? And I think that's where my imaginary friend came to be and kind of came into my life. And all these adventures that we went on, I say Mikey for me was like a big brother. He was my Cyrano. He was my road dog. He was my confidant. Like he was all of the things that I really kind of wanted and searched for or wished I had in a big brother or in a role model or in a mentor of some type. And really it was it was me, right? It was my subconscious the entire time feeding me the thing that it needed, because I believe that like kids create what they need. Right. And so like, to your point, you spoke to yourself for a reason. Like kids create the thing that they need for a reason. But I would go to each of these new schools and I would put on a completely different persona. I tell this story in the book. We transferred. My dad got out of the Air Force. We moved to East Austin, and East Austin at the time was primarily like all Latin and all Black. And the school that I was going to.
This is one of my favorite stories in the book, by the way. So I'm so glad you're talking about it.
The school that I was going to was about 80 to 85% Spanish as a first language. And what they would actually do is put all the English-speaking kids for each grade in one class. And you would sit in that one class all day, and the teachers would rotate. While all of the other students, they moved class to class to class. And so since I knew I was going to this school and I was now living in this neighborhood and seeing all these kids who spoke Spanish, I was like, oh, I need to be a Latin lover. Like, I need to learn Spanish. And my middle name is Ramon. And we don't know where Ramon comes from, to be quite honest with you. My grandma gave my dad the middle name Ramon, and then I got it. We don't know. They are from Florida, so who knows? But
you're like, but I'm leaning in.
We're leaning in. So I was going to go by Ramon when I got to school, rolling of the R's included. And I like watched Univision for like 2 weeks before school started. And like anytime we were in the car, I would try to like turn the radio to like Latin radio stations, and my parents would like swap my hand away. And then I would take the few words that I thought I knew, that I had heard and I thought I knew, like que pasa, I would just repeat them over and over and over again as if that was the only phrase I was going to have to say when I spoke Spanish. First day of school comes, I go to the bus stop. I feel like I've got it. I feel like I've got a few sentences, and all I got to do really is just get through this bus ride. And then once I'm in school, I'm in class with a bunch of kids who speak English as a first language. So I think I'm good. I get on the bus and a kid looks at me and I say, cake pasta. And this kid goes, what did you say? And I said, cake pasta. Trying to say cake pasta. And this kid decimates me. All these kids just start laughing. They ask me what my name is. I say Ramon. They were like, what is your accent? It's like the most embarrassing moment ever. And this character, Ramon, died on that bus. He did not leave that bus. When I got to school that morning, he stayed on the bus. But I was going in and out of all these characters and these personas and playing around with what I thought these people would be, what I thought a football player would be, or a basketball player. Or like, I remember wearing glasses for a whole 6 months because I was like the smart kid. But really, I was just playing. I was just acting. I just didn't know that's what
characters.
Yeah, I just didn't know that's what it was. And then fast forward, like I realized that's my passion. I realized that's what I want to be doing with my life and what I feel I was born to do. And it all started to kind of just click and make sense. Like, oh, you were doing this as a kid. You just didn't know it. And it just took you a while to get back here.
Was there anything in the book that you hesitated adding, or anything that you didn't add that you wish that you had, or?
I wish I would have added a story about my great uncle who passed of AIDS in the early 90s, in 91. And I wish I would have written that story for a couple of reasons. I wish I would have written it because it was such a clear, and you and I both know this because we met obviously working with an AIDS and HIV organization, with AMFAR. But there was so much misinformation at the time, and it was created to be this like everybody's going to get it, and damnation and hell and all these things. And as a 8-year-old boy watching an uncle who I absolutely adored and absolutely loved, and he lived in the Bay Area. He was a professor. He lived in Hayward, and he was a professor at a university up in the Bay. And every time I went to San Francisco, like he loved showing me San Francisco. We'd go to the submarine, and we'd go do the tour at Rikers Island. Oh my gosh, what's the island jail?
You mean the Rock?
The Rock, yeah, the Rock.
Alcatraz.
The Alcatraz. You're such an actor. The Rock. You're such an actor.
Nick Cage. Escape from Alcatraz.
But yes, Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge and like all of these things. And like, you know, as a kid at that time too, you also have like Robin Williams is a massive star, and so many of his movies shot in the Bay Area, and Whoopi Goldberg has shot a few movies in the Bay Area at that time too. So like I'm just like enamored with the Bay, and you know, to watch him get sick and nobody know what it was for a long time, and then ultimately pass. And what processing that was as an 8-year-old boy, the messaging of what TV was saying and the misinformation of what was being said, and how the doctors were saying what it was, and the family didn't really want to talk about it, but they also didn't really know what it was. I do wish I would have wrote about that chapter. Sometimes I think about doing it as like an op-ed, maybe for World AIDS Day.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to change subjects, but I just read a story the other day out of Europe that the 7th person.
That's amazing.
I think it's the 7th person was cured.
That's amazing.
Of HIV.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Super, Kevin, phenomenal friend of ours, the president of AMFAR, Kevin Frost, has said from the moment we've met him or I've met him that his goal is a cure in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So it seems like we're
getting close.
They're making strides, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I just had Simon Pegg on.
Hey. And
Simon talked about working with Tom. And so there's one thing that I have to, and it's purely like sexually.
Okay.
It's like it's like a girl thing.
Okay.
Or maybe a guy thing. I want to talk about the scene in Top Gun. The football scene. I just want to talk about it. Jay, we don't need to talk about Top Gun. We don't need to talk. I just want to talk about the football scene because it's so iconic.
It is. It has become it's become a thing.
It's become a thing, and it was a thing based off of a thing.
Yeah.
That, and having a dad in the Air Force, like it feels like it sort of came full circle for you to play this character. But I want to know about the scene, like
a lot of oil. A lot of sweat. So I don't know. I don't know how much you talk about like how we work and like what we do. Like, have you ever talked about how like the glycerin and the Avion water?
I have never, but I feel like we should talk about this moment because it's making me feel like we need to tell people what to do with the MAC lip gloss.
This is so good. Okay, we have all these tricks, guys. I hate to give them away, but we got some tricks. And an actor can't actually run like all day long or like, be in a hot box all day long and be sweaty. Like they would pass out. They wouldn't be able to do the job. Like you just have to treat them humanely. And so often to make us sweaty or dewy, we use a couple different things. Sometimes you put glycerin on an actor and you spray a little water on it. Sometimes you just spray them down with water. Sometimes you use oils, depending on the person's skin and if they can handle the oils. And so there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Well, with Top Gun, one of the things that we joked about, Tom would do this thing where he would like look around the room, like if we were in a scene, even if we were indoors, he would look around a room and he'd be like, no, there's not enough sweat. There's not enough sweat. They need sweat. I need sweat here. They need sweat here. There's not enough sweat. This is pressure. This is in this moment. These guys, it's make or break. It's life or death. It's everything they've dreamed of. It's all these things. You need the drip. You need the drip
coming down.
You need the
That's Avion spray, guys.
Avion.
That's Avion.
It tastes so good when it hits your lips. But so for this football scene, first of all, we did not know that it was going to be two offenses going at the same time. So when they tell us the rules of the game, we're literally looking at them like, what are they talking about? Like, have they ever seen football before?
This is not flag football.
Like,
guys.
what is it? What is happening here? And the other thing that Joe Kaczynski, our fearless leader, who's such a genius. But one of the things that he tells us is that there's going to be a shirts team and a skins team. Well, this entire cast has not eaten a carb in like 4 months. Everyone is
like doing push-ups on the sidelines.
I mean, for months. Like we were shooting in San Diego and we would get off work and everybody would literally be in the gym 20 minutes later. And you wouldn't even say anything. You'd be like, hey, yo, no, you're going to work? Okay. And then you just like go down to the gym and somebody's on the treadmill, somebody's lifting weights, literally every single day up until we shot that scene. And people were not eating carbs for weeks, months. Everyone wanted to look good for that scene because we know what the beach volleyball scene is, right? It lives forever. Film is
It's a
forever.
lot of pressure.
Film is forever. And like, everybody knows that. We get there. Joe tells us that it's going to be a shirts team and a skins team. And immediately guys just start peeling off their shirts. I'm on the skins team. Like, right?
I didn't do this hard work for nothing.
I'm on the skins team. Immediately. And a couple guys got put on the shirts team and were very unhappy about it. Like wildly. Like the most outspoken they were like, I haven't had bread in a year. Like people were.
Their blood sugar is so low at this point.
So low. Like we are getting all of it right now. And Joe is just like, okay, I'm sorry. Like he's literally, like, he's not laughing to minimize, obviously, how people feel and how they want to, like, show their work. But he is laughing because he's like, okay, the response is not what I expected, actually. I thought some of you would want to do shirts. I'm fine if you all want to go skins. So everybody ends up skins in this football game. And that means that now we have to have more glycerin, more Evian water, more oils and gels. Because again, somebody wants baby oil and water. Somebody wants glycerin and water. Somebody just wants glycerin. Somebody just wants water. Everybody had I'll just dump a bottle of water over my head. Everybody had Everybody had a completely different thing. The one thing that we were all the same on is you were going to be shirtless and you were going to do push-ups. Like I have pictures that are like us in circles doing push-ups together. 8 of us, 9 of us, 10 of us just doing push-ups because everyone wanted to look good, And you guys stand next to Tom. And by the way, I'm just going to be real. Like, I love TC. Like, absolutely love Tom. And I'm sure Simon said the same thing. He's a god. He's a goat. He's absolutely amazing. Like, such an amazing mentor and friend and co-star and producer and actor and all the things. Tom is also 60-some years old and he takes off his shirt and you're like, wait a minute, man. Like, this isn't fair. Like, come on, man. You're supposed to slow down. Like, I got to go work harder now because I got a 60-year-old who looks better than me. Like, this is crazy. So we also knew the level at to which, and he's competitive. So we also knew the level at to which we had to, like, show up,
Yeah, when number 1 on a call sheet shows up and, like, has put the work in. Yeah. It doesn't matter what that work is. You got to rise. Yeah. And if that is like physical fitness or, their level of like,
preparedness,
expertise
all of it.
And preparedness, whatever it is, you got to be right next to them. Because if you're not, it's very clear. Yeah. It's very clear. Yeah. Well, everyone stepped up in that scene. I literally selfishly had to a lot of
sliding off of just men sliding off of each other. That's really what because you couldn't really touch it. You couldn't hold on to anybody because your hands were so slick. And like, so you're literally just sliding down somebody's body or you're like, you try to tackle them in your chest, just like slide off of each other. You try to catch the ball. Was there a
lot of laughter?
Oh my gosh. We're laughing the entire time. I mean, it's amazing how much they were able to cut around how much we're laughing. And some of it is, it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be silly. It's the guys, it's this team, the pilots bonding really for the first time in the film. So like, it also was meant to be fun. But it was a very slippery time. It was a very slippery time.
That is what I envision a male model house to look like.
Katee. Can I tell you that I always joke that like Monday morning is like somebody in the shower, somebody on the toilet, somebody brushing their teeth, and somebody banging them on the door to get in. Like that is, and when you walk in the door, someone's like, hey, did you go to the gym today? No, hi. No, how'd your day go? No, did you book the job? No, like how was work? None of it. Just, hey, did you go to the gym today? Literally, did you go to the gym? What'd you do? Did you do chest? Oh, okay, cool. Like that's what it was. I don't think it's like that now. I don't even know if model houses still exist, but I don't think it's like that now. I also was coming in a time where like they were kind of coming out of this kind of like thinner frame into like a more slightly like muscular frame. So I think that was also part of it. Is like guys were always trying to like look jacked and look super lean. But most of your conversations in a model house are about the product you use, what protein you use. Did you go to the gym today? how much
Sounds
you can,
riveting.
how much you could bench, how much you could squat. There's some genius guys in there actually, so I'm not going to say that. I was in a house with a guy who was working on his master's. I knew another guy who was from Spain, who was in Portland actually, working on his PhD. So like I actually knew a ton of really, really smart guys as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So what do you hope people get out of the book?
Yeah.
After they walk away from it.
Yeah, I hope there's a bit of nostalgia. I hope I kind of hope to play at everyone's nostalgia a little bit. Like I hope you kind of go back to place and time and where you were when you heard the Spice Girls or when you saw Back to the Future or listened to Jodeci or Aaliyah, whatever it may be. I hope you kind of go back to wherever you were in time. I say a couple things. I say one, I hope you there is some inner child healing that's happening and you kind of bring that child forward and find the joy of that child and bring it into your life today. Again, however that manifests in your sense of play, your sense of imagination, your sense of creativity. I hope people take that away from it. And to know that we all have it and to engage it can be so simple. It's not the wildest thing. I mean, you can play piano on your phone now. You know what I mean? There's so many easy and simple ways to kind of engage that sense of play that we lose and just realize how important it is and how engaging it is. It's playing cards with friends. It's again, doing a paint and sip. It's reading a book in a corner and just letting your imagination run with the world that was being built. It's all those things.
Is there anything that you learned about yourself when you were writing it?
It's funny. I learned a lot about you learn, I think if you do that kind of work and if you're willing to do that kind of work and ask some of those tougher questions and even engage family in some of those questions, I think you start to figure out where some of your stuff comes from. Your tics and why you believe this and why you always wash the dishes before you eat, or as you cook. You know what I mean? I wash dishes as I cook. And I know I get that from my dad.
That's insane.
But you know what I mean? I get it from my dad. Just little things like that. You just, all kinds of little things that you start to understand where some of these things in your life come from and who was the influence for them. One of the chapters I write about is role models in the book. And I talk about how my grandpa James, who was this truck driver, was a role model that I didn't even know was there. And while I was looking to tabloids and trying to read the Star or the Inquirer or whatever to see what celebrity did what and what I should be doing, really this dude who was right next to me was actually an amazing role model because he always was in his routine and he always found comfort in his routine and that was consistency for him, and that let him be able to spend time with his family, and that let him be able to do what he needed to do for work, and he had balance in a way that I don't think I understood and didn't know. And then being able to look back, I can see oh, that's what he provided in my life, whether I knew it or not.
That's cool. There's a lot of lessons in the book and you're right. That is what you want to have happen. When people read the book was very much my experience from it, starting to think about my childhood and who I was as a kid, and especially as it relates to my kids and, watching them play and it's just really great. It's such a great book. And I hope that many, many people find it. And
thank you.
And is it available everywhere? I saw you were doing the audiobook, so it's going to be available audio as well.
7:30. I think everything is available on 7:30, if I'm not mistaken, next week, which is crazy. I'm in the eye of the storm. But yeah, next Wednesday, book is out. I'm doing a huge book tour with it. I'm bouncing around to a bunch of cities. Obviously, I'm coming to Portland, but I'm doing New York and Philly, DC, Chicago, Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I went to high school, Houston, LA, Sacramento, Portland. I'm doing a one-man show in 5 of those cities. I'm taking 3 stories from the book and actually putting them up on their feet and performing them. and doing like
I
a full
love
show and
that.
like
Do you know which
creating a
cities you're going to do
whole
yet?
experience with it, from the music to the lighting to the sound cues, like doing that whole thing. I'm doing it in Brooklyn on the 31st at a place called Littlefield. I'm doing it in Chicago on the 3rd at a place called Wilson Abbey. Tulsa, Oklahoma on the 5th at Booker T. Washington High School. Houston on the 6th at a place called Stages. And then I do it here in LA at the Miracle Theater down in Inglewood on the 13th of August. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
That's so cool.
I'm really excited.
That's so cool.
Really, really excited.
Should be super proud of yourself. It's awesome.
Thank you. I can't see it yet. You know how it is when you're in it, you can't see it, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But
you're just, once you slow down, it'll hit you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
This has been really wonderful. I thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
And I hope that the book is so well received because it's really fantastic. And yeah, it's great.
Thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to do this. Thank you.
I know. Me too. Me too. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hindsight. Thank you so much for sticking around. As usual, I always drag someone down with me, and it is my producer, Jeff.
Really making me want to be here more.
Well, I do drag you down to what my mother would always say when I was a kid, like, don't let them drag you down to their level. Little did she know. Actually, she probably did know.
Yeah. Little did she know you'd meet some random person to bring onto your podcast and make them talk to you about your friends that he doesn't know.
It's true. It's true. But you're so good at it, Jeff. You really are good at it, and I appreciate it.
Sure.
You should be in front of the camera more.
Yeah. We won't do that to people. Speaking of being a kid, so you did not have an imaginary friend?
I don't think so. I mean, Jay and I spoke about, I talked to myself a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I vividly remember having huge, long play dates with myself, and like my dolls or my Barbies or whatever, just outside. I could play cops and robbers by myself.
Yeah. Were you coming up with scenarios?
Yes.
Inventing your own stories?
I was all the time,
Yeah.
like I would just like find any excuse to be creative. I remember one of my favorite things to do was to go sit on the toilet, and my mom had this like laundry basket, and I would pull it in front of me like it was like a desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take all the stuff that I could reach from the bathroom as I was going to the potty, and I would put it on the wicker thing, and I would play store.
Yeah.
While I was going to the bathroom all the time. And I would create these elaborate stories about what kind of store it was and what you could buy. And, my poor family, like we grew up, like there's one bathroom in this house. And
Sorry, you can't use the bathroom. It's a store now.
2 hours pretending that I own a bodega in New York City.
Sure.
But no, I don't think I had an imaginary friend. I don't think so. Did you?
I did, yeah.
Did you really?
I did, yeah, for a while.
Is he still with you right now?
No, he's moved on. It was really like sometimes I look back at it and I'm like, was I like actually like just friends with a ghost? Because my imaginary friend was very specific. His name was Winston, and he was like an old man. And
really?
he would just kind of hang out with me, and like he was like a fatherly type figure that would just like hang out with me, and I would talk to him, and he was always just kind of like watching after me. And I look back at it now and I'm like, was that a ghost? It might have been a ghost.
Look, you may never know.
You'll never know.
But, like Jay, it's sort of, he talked very, very much about how as an adult looking back, it becomes very clear what the purpose of the imaginary friend was,
Yeah.
Do you have that sort of retrospective, like, idea or look at your friend, at Winston?
I don't know. I mean, listening to Jay, it did make me start to psychoanalyze myself a little bit and wonder what it was. I mean, I think I've always been a very imaginative person, so I think I was just creating scenarios. And I'm the oldest too, so my siblings were younger, so I think there was a lot of like, I just need somebody to talk to,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. I think I'd probably need to invest a little bit more money into therapy to figure this out.
Well, was your father in your, did he work a lot? Was he in your life? Was he gone a lot?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was probably maybe not the most emotionally connected, so that might have something to do with it. But
yeah.
He was around.
Winston really emotionally connected?
I don't know. It was a small brief period of my life where I remember he would just be hanging out, and I would like tell my mom, I'm like, oh yeah, Winston's here. You know?
Really? And what did your mom think?
She was just like, oh, whatever. My mom's always kind of just been like, whatever. My mom thinks I'm just a very creative kid, so she's always just like, oh, whatever. Jeff's just making up stories.
It's just Jeff. She never questioned who this old man was hanging out with her son. Times have changed. Could you imagine now if there was a little kid that, like, if my child came up to me and was like, my friend Winston was with me all day. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Should we have a play date? And he was like, no, he left. And you start to figure out a little bit more about Winston. And all of a sudden you realize he's like, your age. And I don't know. Like these days you'd immediately think there's like some, old man hanging out with your kid. And like, who do you have to murder?
Right. Does Jenny does she talk to herself? Does she entertain herself?
No. Our child this is one of those things, and we talk about this all the time. It's that sort of like, it's the flip side of having a village help you with your kids. Ginevra is never alone. Mm-hmm. She's never alone. She's got, especially right now when she's going through her chemo and we've got the new baby, my in-laws have moved in with us. And so we not only have myself, my husband, our in-laws, and a night nurse for the baby, a day nanny for Ginny. My parents live 15 minutes away. We have so many people. We have so much help. It is such a fucking luxury, and we're so lucky that we do, because like I don't know how we would get through what we're going through right now without it. Yeah. But the downside of that is that she is never alone. So we're trying this thing now where we tell her she has to have like independent playtime, and she's like super smart. So she understands what independent play is. And so she'll be like, I want to go down and independent play. And then like, she'll like walk away, and then she'll be like, but you should come with me. Like, no.
Mommy, do you want to independent play together?
Go independent play by herself. We'll set the blue timer. And she's like, is the blue gone yet? Is the blue gone yet? Like she just like is so uncomfortable. But then on the flip side of that is that we have a child who is so advanced for her age, because she is constantly spoken to by somebody older than her. And so she's, it shocks people when they hear her talk, because they're like, that's not a 2-year-old talking. It's just crazy. Yeah. So I don't know. It sucks. But no, she doesn't have an imaginary friend. She's got too many real friends. She cannot play by herself. It's fine.
If there's an opposite of a latchkey kid, she's the opposite of that. Yeah. She
is coddled.
Yeah.
She's so coddled. Yeah. But look, it's I love it. It's fine.
So another thing Jay talked a lot about was basketball, and he played college basketball in Portland, yes. And you were telling a story about how you lived up the street from a basketball player that your brother would smoke weed with.
Yeah, Jermaine O'Neal. Yeah. Yeah. My brother probably pulled Jermaine down with him, actually. My brother was a bad kid, as was Jermaine.
Well, I'm going to speak again, as I often do, for your audience. I'm not a sports guy. Yeah. And I don't know anything about basketball. So what's the deal here with this fella?
Okay, so basketball, Jeff. Is this? I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, we can move past that part.
So Jermaine O'Neal, I don't know a ton about him. He was only with the Blazers for a short time, but the Portland Trailblazers drafted him. He was the youngest kid to ever step foot in an NBA game, and he was straight out of high school. And at that time, in like 1996 or whatever it was, that was like super, super rare. And so I don't know how he ended up in the burbs, because like you'd think, an 18-year-old kid, with this money, he probably had a condo downtown or some shit like that. No, he ended up like, in Cedar Hills, just like 23 minutes like from downtown. Yeah. And he lived in a cult, like in a cul-de-sac. Like he
Right.
had like, the 4.5 bath, 5-bedroom house.
Yeah. There's a certain luxury in that.
It's a total luxury. And like, in all honesty, like it was probably a really great place for him because there's not a whole hell of a lot of trouble you can get into when you have an HOA.
Mhm.
And they're all like, we don't care that you're a basketball player. You are
Yeah,
18,
yeah.
just like our children.
Yeah,
like,
you still have to trim your
turn
hedges.
your music off,
Yeah.
And so he didn't, I had left very shortly after that. And I think he probably left shortly after that too.
How
I think
old
he
were
was
you when
probably
this was going on?
I was probably 16. My brother was probably his age.
Was this a point of pride for you, like in high school?
No, I didn't know him. I wasn't a fan. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't a basketball fan. I wasn't I went to the basketball games and watched the dancers. Like I was not a huge watch sports fan when I was a kid. So it just, I could have cared less. Plus I was like dating a hockey player. I would have much rather gone and,
Right.
paid attention to hockey than basketball. But no, my brother, and I don't even know how much they hung out. Like, I don't even know if it was once or whatever. And, if it was one of those things where they were both just, being kids on the same street.
Well, it says something about basketball that this guy's a professional basketball player and he's quite literally your brother's peer. And, like if he wasn't a basketball player, your brother might have been smoking weed with him anyway,
Possibly. You never know. I mean, and that is that weird thing, right? And it's sort of, it is the trajectory of some athletes in some sports allow players to get drafted straight out of high school. And other sports, you really sort of go through the paces of that like collegiate career and then into professional athletics. And so I don't know. I don't know if there's much of a difference between an 18-year-old kid and a 21-year-old kid when you throw them that much money and give them freedom personally. But 18 is so young. It's so young to be away from your parents and have, be trying to navigate adulthood.
And be given millions of dollars.
Yeah. You know, and have your livelihood dependent on how, you play for 90 minutes. I don't even know how long basketball games are. 20, 40, 60 minutes. I don't even know. They're 4 quarters. I do know that.
Yes.
Aren't they? Yeah.
You're asking me who just said he doesn't know anything about basketball. I know that they're not all day.
No, they're not all day.
Yeah.
They're not all day. They're not like, they're not like
it's not like a football
marathon
game that takes
oh my God, football, yes.
like
Football,
7-8 hours to play a game. Yeah.
Well, that's only because it's, that's if it's televised. Now, football, I can talk a little bit more about than basketball.
Well, we can talk about it because it came up in this episode a little bit, at least theatrical portrayals of football. As you were talking about the scene in Top Gun Maverick where they...
Did you watch Top Gun Maverick?
So I haven't. I have not watched Top Gun Maverick. I know
Then we can't talk about the scene. Did you see the scene?
I've never seen the scene. I've seen the original scene. I know about the volleyball scene from the original Top Gun. So I think I get the idea.
What I want to talk about in that original scene, by the way, is I want to talk about the original scene in Top Gun when they play the volleyball and they're so sweaty. And you know that those guys are stinky. Like they're so sweaty and stinky. And he gets on a motorcycle. He immediately pulls his t-shirt on, gets on a motorcycle and drives to Kelly McGillis's house. And then they immediately start having sex, which is stinky and sweaty as well. But like... Eventually,
it doesn't start that way. Though.
Like he showed up to her house, stinky and sweaty, but also not sweaty anymore because he drove his motorcycle. So he'd actually probably dried off, which he just showed up stinky, which is like
they don't show you the
scene. Doesn't he shower?
They don't show you the scene where he stops at a gas station and like washes himself off in the sink.
Gives himself a whore's bath. I feel like, isn't there a scene? Does he walk in? I feel like in the original Top Gun, actually, like he goes and takes a shower really quick. I think he does. I think that's what happens. It's coming back to me now. Like he goes in, he's like, I need a shower. He goes and showers and then they have sexy time.
Okay, so if you're listening to the Hindsight right now, which if you are, thank you for making it this far, put in the comments, does Tom Cruise shower in Top Gun before he has sex?
Because also, he's covered in sand. You know what I mean? Like, I've really thought this through.
Well, it's sort of it's the logical extension of those scenes, because you're watching those scenes and you're lusting after these guys because they look incredible and they're all sweaty and glistening and their muscles are great. And you're like, well, my mind is going places. I would like to do things with these boys. But you're also like, but also maybe shower first.
And then it screeches to a halt when you realize that sand goes places.
Yeah,
like
when you realize
you only try to have sex on a beach one time in your life as a woman, and then you realize it's like a hot tub. It doesn't work.
I mean, it's not fantastic for guys either.
Yeah, but you guys are like, guys are hard up. Like, it's like...
Look, we'll push through, but
especially when they're
but it's not like it's a pleasant experience. Yeah.
But this new scene, I remember watching it and just being like, wow, they created a whole new sport. It's like,
except according to the way Jay was describing it, not only would they be stinky, but they'd probably be sticky too.
They would be sticky because that stuff, you guys, for Battlestar, we used MAC, and we talked about it in the episode, MAC lip gloss. And for people who don't understand what lip gloss is, there was a time, do you remember, it was about 10 years ago, where having super, 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 super glossy lips was like really popular?
Yeah.
So the stickier, the better, because they would say super shiny. MAC has, I don't know, a product called lip glass, and it's clear, but it literally looks like I don't even know what it looks like. It looks like you smeared like gelatin on your lips. It's like crazy how glossy it is. Well, you put that on a makeup puff. And for those of you that don't know what a puff is, it's basically a sponge that you use to put your makeup on.
Yes.
You use that and they tap your face and they put it everywhere where you would sweat, and it holds sweat. And then they spray you with Evian water and it literally looks like sweat. I have been so covered in that stuff that I can smell it in my dreams. Smell it in my dreams.
Yeah. Have you had to ever use the, I can't remember what they're called now, the things that make you cry?
Oh, a tear stick?
Yeah. Have you ever had to use those?
Yeah. I have. And not a lot.
Can you describe it real quick?
Yeah. Chew up a menthol and drop it in your eyeball.
Yeah. It's like a menthol stick that has a powder, right? And then you either rub it under your eyes or you blow it in your face, right?
It comes in two forms. It comes in what you were talking about, which is a crystal. It's a menthol crystal. And it's like this thing that sort of looks like a pipe. And you put the crystal in it. Somebody blows through the end of it and it's blowing the menthol air into your eyes. That's a little dangerous in the sense that it's controlled. So someone's blowing at you and you can be like, okay, that's enough. But I've heard of the crystal sort of like pieces of it potentially going into people's eyes. Never happened to me, but they also make it in a lipstick container, and it's like a lipstick sort of, or a chapstick consistency, and you can rub it right under your eyeball or in the sort of close to the tear duct, and it stays there and it's matte, so you cannot see it on camera, and so it is so widely used in our industry. More people use it than you think. And especially if you want to see like the one solitary single tear drip down the side of the face, things like that, I would venture to guess. Now, this is me just completely guessing, and I'm sure actors will be like, I've done this on cue 20 times in my fucking life. All right, you win good for you. You win an award. But most people, that is calculated. It's either a dropper of a glycerin eye drop that's perfectly placed, or they will do the blow stick or something of that like ilk to get one tear to drop down perfectly on your face.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I don't use it a ton, but I have done it because there are times where you've done the scene so many times and they'll go to... The smart thing for an actor to do in a scene like that is actually, a lot of times they'll start in a wide shot. A wide shot means the whole scene, right? From a distance. It's the same as your phone. You like a big wide and then a single is like really tight on someone's face. So directors will start in a wide, and I always say, don't blow your load on the wide, because you can't see someone cry from 40 feet away. Right. You need to save it for when they punch in and get really tight in a single or a double shot. But what I will do a lot of times is I will ask a director to start in my close-up so I can get it where it needs to be. And then I'll ask him to pop back into the wide where I don't need it as much. But a lot of times you'll end up having to do something so many times and you just dry out. You just dry out. There's like no tears left. Or they've got atmosphere smoke blasting at your face too, which makes your eyes itch and like, trying to like, or it's, 3:00 in the morning and you're out with the atmosphere smoke plus a rain tower, plus there's, it's 20 degrees out and like it's all of these things. And you're like, can you cry on this scene? And you're like, well, fuck. Yeah, I can. Just give me the tear stick. I can cry. So it's definitely a tool. It's definitely a tool.
Right. So sticky, hot, tear sticks, everything about movie making is the opposite of what they want you to. It's like when they make food for commercials and it's like all fake, Yeah. It's like the burger looks really good, just like those guys look really good playing football.
Yeah.
But you don't want to eat that.
No, you don't want to eat it. You do not want to eat one of those
you don't
guys.
want to eat that. You don't
Not
eat
during that scene. I really liked Jay's book. I've said this many, many times in my life that I don't read a lot of literature because I've read so many scripts in my life. And normally I'm reading scripts and memorizing dialogue and I don't have a lot of time to actually read for leisure or for pleasure. And I read his book and I really loved it. It was so identifiable, like even though we obviously grew up very, very differently and had a completely different upbringing and different life experiences and circumstances and things like that. But his book was moving and interesting and it was so well written and very palatable. And I found that even though his imaginary friend was true and real to him, that I found him almost almost like a metaphor, that just sort of carried through the whole thing, and that he used as a vehicle almost to write a book about his life.
Yeah.
It was really cool. I would highly suggest it.
Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah. So let's get some questions going, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay. Get Deaf says, so I never watched Clone Wars, but the best part of Star Wars Clone Wars is Bad Batch and the Ahsoka episodes at the tail end of Clone Wars, the episodes in season 7, because of Ashley's portrayal of Ahsoka. I love her voice, by the way. I am also so glad she got the numbers on the attendees and made the decision to make the clothes for women and girls. And oh my God, I never knew women had to pretend to be men to even talk about Star Wars. Yeah. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
It's such a crazy thing that exists, that it's so exclusionary at times online.
I feel like it's changing though. I mean, it's still hostile in some aspect. I mean, what do I know? I'm not talking from a point of experience, but I'm not, I don't know what the true experience is like, but I do feel like it's more visible, and the perception out there of what a Star Wars fan is not necessarily just some nerdy white guy. It's all kinds of people of all genders and races and everything. And I think, not to be a corporate shill, but I do feel like Disney has done a very good job of putting representation in the shows and in the movies and stuff, which has really helped. And I think they get a lot of shit for that. And, I don't work for Disney, so I can say what I want, but they I do think that's commendable that they've made that a priority, and I think that's opened it up to a lot of fans that
I agree
wouldn't
with
necessarily
you completely. Yeah. It has, and I also think that and we get into this a lot more with our conversation with Paul later. How he talked about that. If you don't have BIPOC characters playing characters that are not necessarily stereotypical BIPOC characters. The fact that he can be a fighter pilot and you don't have to describe him as like the Korean fighter pilot stepped out of the ship. It's just, he's a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
So I think that is what Disney has done so well, is that they've opened up the casting and given people opportunities to play characters that they should have opportunities to play.
Yeah. I mean, yourself included. Like, you're not just a token female character in the show. Like, they actually gave you a story, like, which is not always the case,
I know. Too much of it, according to some people. But anyway, DG Ellis 5420 said, Star Wars, Star Trek, Simon Pegg now needs to be in Starship Troopers, maybe a shower scene. That would make him a 3-star celebrity, make it so. I think Starship Troopers. Do you remember watching Starship Troopers when it first came out?
Yeah.
Fuck,
I was right at the age, Katee, where when that movie came out, not only is it sci-fi, so I'm all over it, it's crazy weird bugs, I'm all over it, and then that shower scene. I mean...
I don't even remember the shower scene. I have no idea what anyone's talking about. And I loved Starship Troopers. Are they all in the shower?
It's the co-ed shower, lots of nudity. They're all hanging out. They're all fit, young, Starship Troopers, and they're all naked and hot and everything. And
I remember Eddie Olmos did a scene in his movie. You know how Battlestar Galactica had movies as well?
Mm-hmm.
He did a co-ed shower scene, and I believe there was a penis in it. I think there was a penis in it. I know there were boobies.
Yeah, of course there were boobies, but that's funny how the penis is like
it's a penis.
What?
No. Let's get into the mail sack.
Mail sack. We're going to the mail sack. Mail sack. Why are we calling it mail sack?
I still love the part when it says, "Why are we calling it?"
Yeah, it's like halfway through the song, it starts to question itself.
It does, because it leans really hard into it, and then it goes, "Why are we? Why did we just create a Eurovision song?" So we've got some merch ideas from Andy.
Yeah, we asked for some people to send us merch ideas on a previous episode, so we got some good ones here.
We did, and it says, okay, so a Katee action figure to go along with my modest Star Wars collection, just an action figure of you, not like a superhero, just a normal person. My other thought was a Katee bobblehead. A Katee bobblehead would be kind of funny. I don't know if an action figure would actually sell. I don't think so. I'm not Conan O'Brien. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
know.
Maybe to your fans here,
Maybe.
We've got that photo of you. I don't know if people have seen it. I think it's on our YouTube banner, maybe, of you holding the lightsaber and the baby and the Starbucks cup and everything. Well, that would be a good little action figure, I think.
That would, with like interchangeable things to put in the hand.
Yeah.
Like depending on who you want her to be.
Yeah, it's like the multi-purpose Katee action figure. You've got like a bo-katan helmet and a Starbucks helmet that you can switch out.
You can put the baby Bjorn on the front.
Yeah. You got a cowboy hat
or a Grogu.
Yeah, exactly.
You got the dark saber, which also turns into a gun from Long.
See, now here's the business plan, Katee, is we make the base model, and then to all your fans, if they want the accessories, they all are separate. You got to buy them all separately. We make bank.
Well, that's the only way we're going to pay for this podcast.
Well, the fans are asking for it, I think.
They are. So. Jordan says, I drew this just for this show and haven't posted it anywhere in case you wanted to utilize it for something in the future. Okay, so Jordan, I'm just going to explain this to you, and I think we actually need to post this, Jordan.
Yeah,
so we might need to get you to sign a release on this. But so it is like a stamp for those of you that go with me here. It's a stamp. It's square. It's got two men that look like they're from the Thunder Down Under on either side of myself in the middle. One of the men has a microphone coming out of his Speedo.
Well, both of the men are wearing Speedos. Yeah,
they're both wearing Speedos, but that's Thunder from Down Under, Jeffrey.
Oh, well, for those of us that aren't
for those
so
of you who don't know. And then there are envelopes shoved in the other one's pants, Speedo, excuse me. And the mail sack looks like balls.
Yes. So Katee is in a sack.
I'm in the sack. And the sack looks like balls. I think it's genius, and I feel like we need to use it for something.
No, I think
Robin just came in and said it looks amazing. Good job.
There's obviously a lot of things to draw your eye to in this art, but I have to say the likeness of you is pretty good. It's like really good.
It actually caught my attention first.
Yeah. It's like spot on.
Yeah. I went to not the sack and not the separate sacks on either side of me, but me, and then went to the sack.
Yes. Yes. Which you were apparently kneeling in.
I'm apparently kneeling in it. I think I'm kneeling in it. You guys, this is going to have to end up someplace.
Now, who do you think that the two guys are?
Oh my God, I have no idea. Probably two of the guys from the football scene in the new Top Gun Maverick.
I was thinking it was two Robins.
It could be two Robins.
I've seen Robin's Instagram.
It could be two Robins.
Yeah.
Yeah. My husband has the ability to have just a phenomenal physique.
Go check it out. Check out Robin's Instagram. And
yeah, it's pretty awesome.
If this episode got you thinking about men with their shirts off.
I did marry up, I'm going to be honest. David says, do you think there could be some 2% themed merchandise? I mean, just to lean into it, am I right? Totally asking for a friend, t-shirt size XLXL. Do you know the 2% thing, Jeff?
I don't.
Okay. So this is what happened. I was on Christian Harloff's show called The Big Thing. And I made a joke where I said that, I don't even remember what the joke was, but basically what the joke was that, you know, Robin was trying to get me out of like this funk because I was like, they all hate me. And he was like, they don't all hate you. Like, you know, there's like, you know, and then he made me realize that like, they don't all hate me. And like, I needed to focus on the fact that like, you know, you can't win everyone. And they're just like, you know, 30% love bo-katan and they love me. 10%, you know, hate me. There's like, you know, 15% that just don't like Disney in general. And then you got 2% that just want me to sit on their face.
I really thought that was going to go somewhere sweet.
I think everyone did. And it blew up because it was like, no one was prepared for it. I don't think people think I'm funny. Guard. Yeah. Because it was really funny. But here's the issue. The issue is, it is crass. It is very crass. Of course it's crass. And
let's look at this mail sack thing again real quick and talk about crassness.
I know. Well, but here's the thing. Continue. So I own the crassness. The crassness is on me, right? I think what happened was that when people come up to me and they ask me to write 2% on something, I have said no because one person at a convention came up to me and made it super uncomfortable and like was very inappropriate. It was only one. Like, it's only ever been one. For the most part, everyone is just like actually very timid when they're like, could you rate 2% on this? And I've always been like, thank you so much. And I've done my best to try and like not make it awkward. And I've been like, I really can't do it. It got really, you know, inappropriate at one point. But my goal has always been to own it and be like, this is where you get the 2% merch. If it's going to happen, it's going to come out and it's going to like go into, you know, my pocket or, you know, give the money to charity and make it really fantastic. But that's the end of this episode. I love it. What's happening? Where am I going? Where are we at? Oh, I'm going to New York to shoot an episode of Law and Order.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Law and Order. So when this episode comes out, you'll be there, right?
I will be in New York filming. Yeah, one episode. We'll see how it goes. I was a criminal on Law and Order 15 years ago. Obviously, enough time passed that my character can now be a lawyer.
Yeah. I always think that's funny on shows where people will, or like when you have shows that are in the same universe but different shows and the same actors will play the same people and everything. Yeah. I think you should play this role as if you're the same character and has reformed your life and became a lawyer and...
Oh, yeah. Well, she's still a defense attorney, though, so she's not a good person.
Hey, there's some good defense attorneys. I'm excited to do it, though, you know, and it's I've taken a lot of time off to take care of Ginny and be home, and it's nice to go actually back to work for a second, you know, like it'll be fun. Yeah, as short as it will be, but that's where I'll be. I'll be in New York when this comes out. Are you gonna go get some pizza?
No, I don't like New York pizza.
Uh-oh, controversial.
I know. You guys send your comments, all that good stuff to the Sackhoff Show at gmail.com. Yeah, let us know. Let us know if you'd buy some shirts that said 2% MILF on them. Let me know. Because that might be the first piece of merch. And this Sackhoff Show stamp. We definitely need to get that. Who at the American government do we need to book?
Can we submit it as an official stamp? I love it.
Oh, Dax, I am not.
Oh, he'd love this.
He would love this.
Yeah, he'd be jealous.
All right, you guys, that's the episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next Tuesday, and that's what's up.